I am a normal, ordinary husband who adores his wife and two children. I am a typical white guy from the middle class, 180 centimeters, 80 kilograms, who does not behave like a bull, but also never complains. I have a good job in sales, and my family usually doesn't need anything. My wife and I have been together for 8 wonderful years. After all these years, I'm calling her my fiancée because I keep feeling like we're still on our honeymoon. We got married 6 months later and got used to the routine of work, study, and more work to make ends meet. And was a first-year teacher and made a hell of a lot of money, so I worked 2 part-time jobs while graduating from college. A year later, I graduated and got a pretty decent job. The money didn't come out of the sky, but we were fine. After the birth of our 2 children, I was on top of the world. I thought it couldn't be better, and that's when I first noticed the change in our relationship. A small, but nevertheless a change. When you're constantly with someone, day in and day out, you sometimes don't notice small changes. They kind of sneak up on you and happen when you're not looking at them. Since my wife was a teacher, I knew that every semester at her job there was an open house and everything related to it. But lately, for some reason, there have been more such days than usual. And said that because of such events, she needed to do this or that, and every time she came home 2 or 3 hours later. When she came back, I asked her how it went and got the same general answer. You know, these are school stuff. They never change. I even offered to take her to school and pick her up when it was over, and snapped that I needed to look after our children at this time, and if I took them with me, they would go to bed too late, and so on, and so on. On Tuesday evening, and announced that she would have to meet with several teachers after dinner on Wednesday to discuss the new testing data. No problem, dear. I'll take care of the children and make sure they go to bed on time. With a wink at Anne, I suggested, maybe we can relax when you get home. From the look in my wife's eyes, I realized that I definitely shouldn't hope for this. Late Wednesday afternoon, I called and informed her that I would have to work late, but I arranged for Carol to come over and look after the children while she was at her meeting with colleagues. In response, she told me not to work too late and that she hoped to see me when she got home. My wife had no idea that tonight I would try to find out what kind of meetings she actually goes to. I parked not far from home, turned off the headlights, and waited for my wife to go to her meeting. Everything was going like clockwork. After dinner, she got into her car and hit the road. Following her at a long enough distance so that she couldn't see me, I followed her for about 15 minutes until she pulled into the driveway of a house we'd never been to before. Or at least I've never been there. Parked on the street, I waited for what seemed like an eternity. I wanted to give her enough time for the others to come, but no one else showed up. Gathering all the strength I could muster, I quietly got out of the car and walked up to the house. I took out my notebook and wrote down the house number. Why? Who knows? I was new to this kind of detective work. Having no real plan in mind, I approached the front of the house and tried to look through the windows. Damn curtains! I swore under my breath, since nothing could be seen through them, although I could hear voices inside. I moved to the side, gradually bypassing the house, and finally found myself in the back of it. There was a swimming pool in the backyard, and I saw that the sliding glass door leading to it was slightly ajar. I was lucky that the door wasn't locked, and I crept cautiously closer to it to get a better look. Oh, you! Who the hell is this bastard? I thought to myself. It took all my strength not to rush in, lay this guy down, and drag my wife to the car by her hair. Thank God my mind slapped me in the face before I did something so stupid. The dude was under 2 meters tall and had to weigh at least 110 kilograms. He would have smeared me on the floor in the blink of an eye, and then what would I have achieved at all? At that moment, I realized that my marriage had broken up, and all I had was a raging anger inside. I do not know which of them I hated the most, watching them ruin my life. All I could do now was find a way to make them pay dearly for what they had done to me. After looking around and making sure that no one was watching me, I walked right up to the open doors. It would be very stupid to be caught right now, I thought. Looking around once more, I looked at the pool and the dark backyard. When I looked closer, I was struck by the lying children's toys. That bastard was married too. He and my cheater were destroying not one family, but 2. By this time, when I looked inside the house again, the man had already finished using my wife, and I heard him say, "I don't have the whole damn night." There was nothing gentle about this man. He was going to make her pay for all the whining she'd given out in the last 20 minutes. From her first sigh and the expression on her face, I could tell that it wasn't exactly pleasant for her. Everything those two were doing was getting on my nerves now. Now I had a name. She was living in her own world right now. I went from being completely disgusted to hating Nick. Payback is what awaits you, Nick, and I will do everything possible to make sure that you get your full share, I whispered to myself. My anger was replaced by involuntary anxiety. Well, let's do it. I thought to myself, damn it, look at the time. I need to get out of here. It was a signal for me to retreat hastily so that I could get home and get rid of Carol before and showed up on the doorstep. Quietly slipping out onto the porch from the backyard, I ran to my car. Jumping in, I started the engine and drove with the lights off until I turned the corner. To say that I was angry would be an understatement. The only thing I felt for my wife now was hatred. I did everything for her. She didn't need anything. And this fool shows her love for me like this, and at the same time pretends to be a prim and decent wife and mother. I wonder what her family and friends would say if they saw what I've seen in the last 45 minutes. No matter how long it takes, I will take revenge on both of them. Part 02. The husband takes revenge on his wife and her lover. I rushed home. Carol changed the children's clothes and put them to bed before I arrived. After seeing her off and thanking her for looking after the children, I checked on the children and made sure they were already asleep. Then he went down to the kitchen, poured himself a glass of wine and waited for Anne to appear. About 30 minutes later, I heard her car drive into the garage. My wife hurried in, apologizing for being so late. I asked how her meeting went and where it took place. Nick, our principal, decided to spend it at home, not at school, she replied. Pushing her for more details, I asked how many people had come. Oh, there were 7 of us from the teaching staff, she replied in a calm voice. I asked my wife if she wanted a glass of wine, but refused, explaining that she was very tired and just wanted to go to bed. I immediately gave her an inviting grin, but she stopped me. Not today, dear. Maybe tomorrow, she said, climbing the stairs to our bedroom. When I returned to the bedroom and was already in bed, I didn't get much sleep that night. Everything I saw in that house kept spinning in front of my eyes. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. But I suppressed that feeling. Now I have to restrain myself and be very careful. I need to be sure that she doesn't suspect that I know what a cheater she is. My last thought before I finally fell into a restless sleep in the morning was that if Anne had come home and told me everything, we might still have had a chance. But now I felt only disgust for this lying fool. The next day at work, I started making my revenge plan. Having decided to completely avoid possible unnecessary publicity, I contacted a lawyer in a neighboring city. The second step was to hire Dan, a private investigator, to keep an eye on Anne and film her adventures on camera. I uploaded the photos from my phone to my work computer and emailed them, along with Nick's address, to Dan and my lawyer. Then he changed all our bank accounts. For the next month, I was a typical decent husband. I was always in a good mood, took care of the children when their mother went to make love to her lover, and paid all the expenses myself, not letting Anne know that the bills had been changed. And I stopped contacting her about marital lovemaking, as I had done in the past. It turned out that it didn't even bother her. It seemed like she was getting everything she needed without me. After 6 weeks, everything I wanted was ready. All the money has now been transferred to new accounts registered only in my name. I left some dollars in the old shared account. Dan, my detective, has prepared a new video of my wife and Nick making a storm. Dan used the same approach as me. Of course, he was a professional in his field, and the video even had sound. I made 3 copies and sent one to my lawyer along with Anne's panties, which I hid that night. Now I was ready to put my plan into practice. However, there was one point that I was obliged and determined to implement before divorcing this fool. On Friday, the children asked to spend the night with their friends, so there are no distractions left. I had prepared in advance, including having handcuffs to fasten my hands to the headboard. After putting the dishes in the sink after dinner, I took Anne's hand and told her that I had a surprise for her upstairs. After that night, Anne became much more attentive, and it has been more than 2 weeks since her last meeting. I even thought that maybe she dumped her boyfriend and we had a chance. But my last hopes were dashed when she announced shortly afterwards that she needed to go to another meeting. She said she needed to do this in order to release school progress reports before Thanksgiving. I didn't care if it was a real meeting or not. It just triggered all the anger that was building up inside me. I ended up with her as my wife. The next day, I went to work and checked my schedule for the rest of the year. There was nothing urgent, which means I can take my remaining 2 weeks off and take the kids somewhere far away after the shit hits the fan. I had arranged in advance with the transportation service that, upon my call, on the right day, they would pack Anne's things and deliver them to her parents' house. On the day when everything was supposed to collapse, it remains only to resolve the issue with Nick. Nick, as it turned out, had been married for about 6 years and had a young daughter. His wife worked as a secretary at one of the small law firms in the city. Even though I wanted to get back at Nick, I didn't want to bother with his wife, whose name was Sue, and their little daughter. However, on reflection, I realized that if someone was making love behind my back, I would like to know about it. The next day, at lunch, I went in to talk to her. I explained to Sue that my wife works as a teacher at her husband's school and that I needed to talk to her about something important in private. And it would be better if we discussed this outside her office, somewhere in a private place, without unnecessary ears. Sue agreed. We got a couple of sandwiches and sodas and got into the back seat of my SUV. I started by saying that this is the last thing I would like to do right now, but I thought there were a few things about Nick that she should know about. What are you talking about? Is there something wrong with Nick? Sue asked anxiously. All I could say to her was, "Judge for yourself, Sue. Look at this." I inserted the DVD into the portable player. There was no preparation before going into action. The clarity of the sound and image was excellent and left no room for imagination. Sue just stared at the screen with her mouth open until I stopped the video after about 10 minutes. I was shocked that she wasn't crying, screaming, or anything like that. I think for a second I was really scared for her. Finally, in an almost dead calm voice, she asked, "Is this my copy?" I told her that it was one of the 3 copies I had made. Sue told me that she had never suspected anything like this. I was particularly struck by her admission that all the time the lovers were making love downstairs, their daughter, whom he was supposed to take care of, was sleeping upstairs. I asked her what she planned to do now, but she only said, "He'll pay." Oh my God, he's going to pay. He'll regret the day he met me. I made up my mind and told her what I had planned for Anne. After listening, she chuckled. "It's evil, but I like it." I apologized for being the one who brought her such hard news, but I knew she would want to know the truth. We exchanged phone numbers. Sue thanked me and returned to her office. All I can think about is that the poor bastard will never know what really happened to him. The day before Thanksgiving, I told Anne that my parents were asking if the children would be able to come to them because they knew that we planned to be with her parents and family, and replied, "No problem. In that case, I will have you all at my disposal." I just smiled. Thanksgiving was an event for my wife's parents. The whole family had gathered, and the house was filled with people cooking or watching a big game on her father's new high-definition TV. I limited myself to 2 glasses of wine because I wanted to keep the clarity for what was about to happen. I planned my exit right after dessert and coffee. Finally, dinner was over. While everyone was relaxing, I announced that I had a home video that I wanted to share with everyone. My wife, who is still married, looked at me with a shocked expression on her face. I explained that it was a cute homemade video that I wanted to surprise my beloved wife with. Everyone clapped and moved into the living room, trying to get good viewing spots, and took me aside and cooed. "When did you have time? That's so sweet of you. I really love you." All I could say was that she should hurry up after everyone else so as not to miss a minute of the movie. I inserted the disc into the slot and, taking the remote control so that no one could stop watching, pressed the play button. After the first shots, everyone froze with their mouths wide open, just like Sue. The deathly silence was broken by Anne's scream, "Stop the damn recording!" But I didn't do it. Crying, she rushed to the kitchen with her mother, who rushed after her daughter in hot pursuit. Her father came up to me and said, "I think we've seen enough." I silently handed him the remote control. After that, it was like someone shouted, "Fire!" because everyone present grabbed their outerwear and left without saying a word, without even saying goodbye to the owners. I warned my father-in-law that a truck with all of Anne's belongings would be arriving soon. "Son, I know you're hurting right now," he began, "but this is not the place to hang out your dirty laundry." I gave him a look that would have frozen a glass of water 20 paces away. "You don't know a damn thing about how I feel right now." I exploded. "Would you like to watch a tape of your wife making love to another man? If your daughter hadn't cheated on me over the past year, there wouldn't have been any need for this movie premiere, would there? You can tell her that I changed the locks in the house and that the children and I are going on a long vacation, and I don't want her to call me. I just want her out of my life." I didn't mention anything about the fact that the shared bank accounts now had $5 each, and I cut his daughter out of my individual retirement plan, health insurance, and life insurance, and came out of the kitchen. Her mother motioned for her father to leave us alone. "We need to talk." My ex-wife began rather shyly. I interrupted her. "About how you made love to me and then to Nick? How many other boyfriends have you had? How much longer?" "Just Nick, and it was a terrible mistake," and told me with tears in her eyes, "but I know we can handle this together." "I'm sorry, girl. I don't feel anything but contempt for you right now. I treated you like a queen, and this is how you repay me? I hope you really enjoyed making love to Nick, because I think those dates are over for you too. By the way, you can keep the video as a keepsake." I told her that Sue, her lover's wife, also has a copy of this recording, and I don't think I'd want to be in his shoes right now, and started crying again, but I had nothing more to say to her, so I just left. As I drive away, I see a van with Anne's stuff pulling into their driveway. It was supposed to keep their whole family busy for the rest of the day. The next 2 weeks were just great. It felt like a huge weight had been lifted from me. I told the children that their mother and I were getting divorced, and that now they would live in the house only with me. I informed them that they can see their mother, but not so often. I do not know if it was because it was a vacation where we had fun, or if the children just did not fully realize the changes that had happened, but they seemed to be fine. As for Nick, he was very unlucky. Sue got a court order against him and effectively locked him in his own house. She threw his clothes on the front lawn and then turned on the sprinklers. Unlike her, at least I packed Anne's things. In addition, Sue sent a copy of the recording to the local school board complaining that parents did not understand how they could hire a dishonest bastard to monitor their children's education. Nick and Anne were quietly fired 2 weeks later. I thought I was the cool one, but Sue was able to give a new meaning to the term cold-blooded fool. After my children and I returned from vacation, everything came to an end, and did not dispute anything during the divorce and moved out soon after. She still keeps in touch with the children, but at a distance, with the help of postcards and letters. Nick and Sue's divorce was ugly at best. It turns out that Anne was one of the many people he made love to. Nick had to move in with his brother because now he couldn't even afford to rent an apartment. Sue and I became best friends. Our children have also become friends and play together. And yes, we can say that we are almost a couple now. We're both a little wary of moving too fast, but I see a glint in her eyes when I enter the room. I don't think it's going to be too long before I find out which girl Nick turned down.